students. In Indian Economy Unit 4, we have discussed poverty. We talked about the different types of poverty. I gave you some numerical example to make you understand the difference between absolute and relative poverty. We talked about the other types of poverty like secondary poverty, and we also saw that many a times it is argued that urban poverty is nothing but an extension of rural poverty. We also understood the various methodologies used to fix poverty line. We talked about the Planning Commission methodology, which was the first one in this aspect. Then we talked about the methodology given by Dandekar and Rath, which was not very different from the Planning Commission methodology because it was basically taking into account the nutrition requirements and food needs of the people. And one criticism it also shared with the Planning Commission methodology was that it did not take into account the aspect on health and education. So it did not take into account the expenditure on health and education while calculating the poverty line. Then we talked about the more recent approach given by another academician, Suresh Tendulkar, and we saw that it took into account not only food but also health and education, the expenditure on food, health and education. We also talked about the multidimensional poverty index, where we talked about the other dimensions of poverty also, which are taken into account to calculate the poverty line and to understand which all people are below poverty line. We also talked about the difference in poverty estimates, and we understood one thing, that whenever you are looking at the estimates of poverty in a particular country, you should first of all ask as to which particular methodology has been used. Why? Because different methodologies, different approaches give us different poverty estimates. We also talked about the World Bank method of fixing poverty line. We understood what is meant by purchase power parity and how it is used to determine the poverty line in different countries of the world. Then we also understood how poverty is measured. We understood that basically it is the National Sample Survey Organization which conducts these poverty surveys every 5 years, these consumption surveys every 5 years, and based on the results they estimate poverty. So it is not as if we conduct a census of all the population, we only conduct sample surveys. We also talked about the causes of poverty in detail, and then we moved over to the different programs which were implemented by various governments since independence to eradicate poverty. We talked about the first program in this direction, Food for Works program, and then National Rural Employment Program, in which wages were given away to workers and the workers were engaged in some fruitful work and they were given some wages. Then we talked about how Integrated Rural Development Program was a slightly different approach. It did not provide any wages. It actually provided credit and self-employment, encourage self-employment among these people so that they can have their own business and then they can earn their own salaries, they can earn their own incomes. Then we talked about the training for rural youth and for training of rural youth for self-employment, wherein we talked about how it also had this feature of training the people so that they can start their own enterprise. And then we talked about how in India, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme made right to work almost like a fundamental right, wherein job was guaranteed to every rural household. 100 days of job was guaranteed to every rural household, and this was what made it different from the other schemes which were implemented earlier. Now let us talk about economic inequality. Before talking about economic inequality, let me tell you that economic inequality has not been mentioned as such in your syllabus. However, it has been included because many a times there have been some questions on economic inequality, and more importantly, you should know when you are talking about poverty, you should know about economic inequality also, because many a times it's not poverty which is a problem, it's economic inequality which is a problem. I hope you remember our discussion on absolute and relative poverty. Fine. Economic inequality is where there is a lot of relative poverty. Fine. Economic inequality means all the sections of the societies are earning significantly different incomes and so there is a lot of relative poverty in such societies. So let us begin our discussion on economic inequality, unequal distribution of income and opportunity between different groups in society. In fact, if you would look at the directive principles of state policy in India, you have read about them in different courses earlier also. There you have talked about directive principles of state policy in part 4 of the Indian Constitution. Now, these exhort the government, one of these directive principles exhort the government to ensure that there is equal distribution of wealth to the extent possible. Now, since they are directive principles, they are not justiciable, which means you cannot go to the court claiming that this particular directive principle has not been implemented by the government. They are only guiding lights for the government. So, what I am trying to tell you is that to eradicate economic inequality is also mandated by our constitution, which was designed by our founding forefathers. Right? So, unequal distribution of income and opportunity between different groups, between different sections in the society. That is known as economic inequality. It may so happen that in a country, let's say, I'll give you an example. Supposing $1 or let's say rupees 70 is the poverty line, and everybody is earning above rupees 70. So there is no absolute poverty, but some are earning 80 rupees while some are earning 8,000 rupees. So there would be relative poverty and there would be economic inequality. So though there are not any instances of absolute poverty, but still this is a big problem for that particular society, because economic inequality in itself causes a lot of problems. For example, many a times it leads to high crime rates. Those in the poor sections of the society, they feel deprived, and many of them, they are compelled by these circumstances to commit various crimes, and mostly the targets of such crimes would be people who are much more richer than them. So many a times economic inequality leads to high crime rates. Not only this, there is a tension in the society. Naturally, if not all of them are earning the same amount of money, even if everybody is able to earn his bread and butter, even if everybody is able to survive, but there's a lot of difference in the incomes, earnings, then naturally there would be some tensions between different sections of the society which are earning varyingly different amount of income. So this may lead to political instability also. There could be civil war also. There could be various tensions in the society also, and that is why economic inequality is not considered good. So while poverty is a big problem, economic inequality is also an equally big problem for a society. Now, how do we measure economic inequality? To measure economic inequality, we have an index which is known as the Gross Inequality Index. So G means gross, I is for inequality, right? And then we have the IN is for inequality, and then we have the I for index. So this way, this particular index is known also as Gini. So Gini coefficient helps you measure inequality in a particular society. And in a Gini index, what will happen is that every country will get a score from 0 to 1. 0 is perfect equality, again, which is not possible, not realistically achievable. Again, 1, the highest possible score, means perfect inequality, which means if a country is moving slowly from 0 to 1, it is becoming more and more unequal. There is more unequal distribution of income and opportunity in the society. On the other hand, it is a good news if the country is moving from 1 towards 0 gradually, because that would mean that the society has become more and more equal. And the value of Gini coefficient, as I said, can range from 0 to 1. 0 means zero inequality, and perfect equality. 1 means 100% inequality. So it is 100% inequality if it is 1, right? Now let us take the case of India, and you would find out that in India, richest 1% of the population, that is less than around 1.3 crore people, they earn 58% of the wealth. So they earn more than half of the wealth, which means the remaining 99% are only earning 42% of the wealth. Fine. Again, if you look at the same figure in a slightly different manner, richest 10%, they own 80% of the wealth, which means those who are below this particular rich section of society, the section which is comprising the 90% of the population, the remaining 90% of the population, it only earns 20% of the wealth. So there is a lot of inequality in the society. Rich people earn a lot, while those who are not rich, they are not earning a lot. And you would be surprised to know that this particular condition has aggravated during the corona pandemic as well. There also we have seen the richest have become richer, while the poorer people of the society, they have grown, they have become more poor. So this is one problem that is there with India, and that is why if you look at the Gini index for India, you will find that the rank of India has gone from 48 to 63 as per CBDT data, Central Board of Direct Taxes data from 2013 to 2016. So if we talk about India, you will see that the economic inequality in India has increased, and this is the data that we have for 2013 to 16. Fine. And please also understand that this is a problem not only in India but across the world. Across the most of the countries are having this kind of economic inequality, which causes a lot of tension, which causes a lot of instability in the society. Civil unrest is there. People tend to violate laws. They tend to oppose this unequal distribution of income and opportunity. There is a lot of tension in the society, and that is why economic inequality is not considered good for a society. Fine. So with this, we come to the close of this particular session today. Tomorrow, we will start our discussion on employment and unemployment in India. Thank you very much for your time.